Hi, my name is Ryan. I'm the director and editor of the short documentary about Galloping Ghost, the world's largest arcade. And I just wanted to do a behind the scenes kind of commentary with a little bit of how it was made and trivia facts about the arcade and the documentary itself. And I'm here with someone who was a part of the process from the beginning.
Hello, my name is Christine. I helped film many different things on the documentary and helped with a lot of other pieces. So let's get into it.
Yeah, for sure. All right. The first shot that we have here is a drone shot.
Yeah, you guys ran across the street, had 15 minutes of battery left, and this is what we got.
Yeah, we had 15 minutes of battery on the drone, like you said, and just kind of went for it.
Mm-hmm. And then this is what's unveiled as to being on the inside of that building.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this was a cool thing to film too, because the way we experienced it is how it's sort of presented here, where it was totally quiet in the arcade. It was before it opened, and Doc, the owner, was just walking around turning on arcade machines. And then, it just slowly got louder and louder until eventually it was just filled with arcade noise.
It was cool. We set up our cameras at, myself and our couple other cameramen. And we were just like, okay, just start rolling and he'll come by. Mm-hmm. And actually, you'll see Doc here in a second with as he's starting to turn things on, and they have a whole system kind of going behind the cabinets of, switches connected to switches to make it easier to just press the button and a whole section turns on.
That's what this stick that Doc is holding is for, is for reaching in narrow crevices and flipping the power switch.
Yep.
And here's where the music comes in. It's by an awesome guy named Michi. And he was just a friend of a friend. I just reached out and said, hey, can I use your music? You want to make some music for this thing? And he was like, yeah, for sure.
And he's on SoundCloud.
He is on SoundCloud. Check him out. He's awesome.
Linked in the description of the documentary, I believe.
Yeah, for sure. And you know what? I'll link it in this description too.
Look at that.
That's the drone shot as well.
The one other one.
The 15 minutes of drone footage that we had.
Yeah. And I gotta love Galloping Ghost's logo there.
Yeah, mm-hmm. Doc.
You should mention we couldn't include that story about where that logo's from.
He just sort of liked the name, and I think he said it was based on an old World War II fighter jet. And he liked it. He designed the logo himself, and we wanted to include that in the documentary, but we ended up having to cut it out just because it was a little extra tidbit that wasn't really necessary to telling Galloping Ghost's story.
Yeah, that's really was the goal of the documentary, would you say, is just,
yeah.
Hey, let's tell their history and their story.
Yeah, kind of a general overview, like a crash course, sort of.
And as Doc's talking here, I mean, he's the core of the documentary. We talked to him for 3 hours in his initial interview, so it was, crazy the amount of stories this guy was full of. It was awesome. It was really tough to edit. So.
Yeah, no, but that's why we structured the documentary around it, is because Doc had a lot of good stories, and like we said, interviewed him for 3 hours, and he had energy the whole time.
Yeah.
So.
Kudos to him.
And he was really on board with the documentary too. We got lucky that he was just super supportive. He said, yeah, film whatever you want. So that made it a lot easier to film all this footage.
Yeah, if he said no, I don't think this would have gone as smoothly.
You couldn't sneak in, yeah.
Yeah. And once we were there, the weekend, we filmed this all in one weekend, and we had like a little back room we threw our camera bags down in, and we had the whole arcade, free range basically of the arcade to run around and get different shots.
Yeah. And we had a small crew. We had a crew of about 4 people. Mm-hmm. So, it was basically just show up. 2 people would go off and interview people, and 2 people would go and get footage of certain things. That's basically the format. And then we did that for 5 hours, break for lunch, and then do it for 4 more hours.
Exactly.
And then this graphic was a pain to make. I made it myself.
But it's great it kind of gives a foundation, I think, for the documentary to say,
Thanks.
Okay, this is where arcades were at, and now let's talk about where Galloping Ghost comes into play with that.
Yeah, and that was another thing another element of the documentary that I thought was important, was like arcades are kind of this unique thing. They're not as common as they used to be, but they're still around, and they're still cool. That's one thing about this documentary too, is we got a lot of footage of people young, 5, playing arcade games, and people, like 70s, 80s playing arcade games.
The age range in that arcade on any given day is so large. Like, I feel like, yeah, you could see parents coming in with their kids, and we kind of even touch on that later in the documentary too. But visually, you see it consistently throughout. All these different kids. And I did a lot of these man on the street interviews, and it was just really fun to talk to different people. And when you ask what their favorite arcade game is, you're getting different answers every single time.
Yeah, and that was actually something too. For these. They're called man on the street interviews, where you just kind of pull someone aside and ask if they want an interview. Yep. You don't plan the interview ahead of time. We had a list of questions, like the same 10 or so questions that we wanted to ask every random man on the street person. And that helped with editing. If you ask everyone the same questions, it helps it. You can string it together in post-production easier.
Yeah. And here's obviously Doc's office back at their
cool.
Galloping Ghost reproductions.
Yes, which is the place where they repair all the arcade games and fix them up and stuff.
It's just the building like next door, basically.
Yeah, it's just a building or two down.
Yeah.
And this was cool. We were just filming in Doc's office, and he was like, "Oh, hold on one sec," and he just pulled out this book.
Yeah.
And it was
It's not just a book.
Yeah, as he's saying here, the source code for Rampage.
Yeah, that was
the
so
original
cool.
arcade game.
And it's like, what else does he have on his shelves?
Yeah, he just had that there.
One of his guitars was like one of three guitars in the world. Like he's, I mean, as we obviously point out too, he's a collector, and this is just such a small piece of that, and he's great.
Yeah, if I have that clip of him talking about that guitar on video, maybe I'll post that sometime, because it's an
I don't know if we
story.
do. Yeah.
I don't know if we.
I was maybe too entranced in the story, so I did. I was like, my camera's not rolling.
Yeah, no, it was awesome. And actually, this photo is Galloping Ghost's photo that they let us use. They let us use a lot of stuff for this documentary that we didn't film.
Yeah, but it was helpful because we were obviously limited to being there for a weekend, and it helped kind of piece different things together that we needed.
Help tell their history a little bit.
Yeah.
And that's, again, it's good to have someone on your side like Doc was.
For sure.
So it helped a lot.
It's kind of like, that's good. Keep trying. Good luck.
It's like, what a real story, man.
I know, yeah.
Like, so many people, yeah, you're right. Like, he's one of so many people that have probably done that same thing to him.
To Ed Boon, yeah, sure. I love that sword. One thing I do want to mention is when we filmed this documentary, at least speaking for myself, I had Doc a bit too close to the wall, I think, for his main interview shot. If I was refilming this today, I would have a little bit more depth between Doc and the wall.
Yeah, I mean, it is good to point out this was filmed 2 years ago, over 2 years ago.
That now,
yeah, because it took a little bit longer to edit and all of that. But long story short, I mean, yeah, you learn so much in video, like when you get to experience. And both of us happen to be in the media industry now, so it's you learn so much on the job. So
yeah, this was a great learning experience too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, this was a crazy story to hear too. How they just started out, and this
they had none. They had nothing. Yeah, they had none. No cabinets.
Yeah, and even just hearing like Mortal Kombat 2, one of the most popular arcade games ever, wasn't in the city of Chicago at all. Was crazy. Mm-hmm.
But he says, that was a motivator enough to be like, okay, we got to get this on the ground running.
Yeah, for sure. That was a pinball machine on the arcade floor, actually, that they were repairing this was one of the first things we shot. Oh, and this room right here is the back room that we had all of our equipment in. Where they had a lot of their arcade repairing tools.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they got to be ready to do that every day, basically.
Yeah. Because these machines are so old, it's just... Some of them just need a lot of maintenance all the time.
Mm-hmm. And you could see them here walking around. They check every machine every day.
Yeah.
It was a 26-hour day for me.
I can't imagine.
Yeah.
Actually, I kept this shot blurry because what's being talked about here is the long day and driving back. So I
grueling
wanted to...
my eyes might be blurry.
Right, exactly. So maybe it didn't translate super well,
but the wheels translated to driving, and you get the whole
that was
connection.
My thought.
There
that was my logic. If you're wondering why that shot was blurry.
That was the other cool thing, just, seeing all these different people coming through the arcade.
Yeah.
And it was cool because we were there all day for that whole weekend, and the transition of, okay, people have been here for about, 3-4 hours, and then they move on, and then the next grouping kind of comes in, and you see the transition of, how long are people staying here?
Yeah.
Some people longer, some people shorter.
We get a new group of people every couple hours, which was good for our purposes because it meant new footage.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, and this footage we got to borrow from their YouTube channel.
This is Galloping Ghost's footage that they let us use, actually.
But it just goes to they're experts in the field of
repairing
it and everything, yeah.
For sure, so.
They have someone there that knows how to fix anything on those.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And
this too is their footage.
Yeah, Monday Mystery Game from a December footage.
Mm-hmm.
As you can tell by their little logo.
And the logo in the bottom right-hand corner has mistletoe around it for the holidays.
And if you guys aren't familiar with their Monday Mystery Game, it's them putting out a new cabinet on the floor every single Monday.
Yeah.
So it's just that much, how much they are building and adding to their
And I remember
collection.
that game that we saw in that shot was Arm Champs 2. I remember Doc saying that was particularly difficult because that game was made to be, roughed around, so it's hard to repair. It's a hard cabinet to get working, apparently. But it's super cool.
And this really shows just how much they're using every piece of square footage in there.
Uh-huh.
And then obviously, right at the end of the documentary, it's mentioned how they're expanding even more. And
yeah, they're always adding new games.
And they're going to be adding, they're looking to add a second floor.
Yeah, I don't know if they've done that yet, but they're always looking to add more stuff and expand, so I wouldn't be surprised if it's already happened or happening soon.
Yeah.
Those are Galloping Ghost tokens. Yeah, we have a lot of different footage of all these different arcade games, and I remember telling Taylor and TJ, our two camera operators, the first day of filming, like, hey, you guys are going to get really good at filming arcade cabinets because we need like dozens of different shots and angles on dozens of different arcade cabinets.
And that's kind of what made it a challenge and like a fun challenge, because it was like, okay, you can only get shots of people at an arcade cabinet so many times.
Sure.
How can I make this interesting? So looking for those different angles. And there's some shots we'll probably point out later in the documentary that we really particularly love because they are kind of different in that way. So it's, okay,
it's
let's
a
get a...
closer.
Yeah.
And then it helps too when you have a unique looking arcade machine like that. And one thing to note too that I don't know if was made as clear as it maybe could have been in the documentary, but one of the things that makes Galloping Ghost the world's largest arcade is they don't have any repeat cabinets. So some arcades have like 5 cabinets of Pac-Man right in a row, but Galloping Ghost only has 1 Pac-Man, and every machine in there is an individual machine. They don't have any repeats.
So largest isn't necessarily by square footage or,
It's like
or
most
anything like that.
games.
Most games, most
individual
games. Yeah. There you
And
go.
some games you can only play there. They have those one-of-a-kind games.
Yeah, and obviously, they touch on that shortly.
Yeah, you could. I'm sure someone could do an in-depth look at just their one-of-a-kind games that they have there.
I know you had to cut down a little bit of
Yeah,
that.
we had a lot of discussion and interviews and a lot of footage of their one-of-a-kind games, but it just ended up being a bit distracting for Galloping Ghost's overall story.
Right.
So we had to trim it down, but they do have a lot of one-of-a-kind games there. I love that cabinet art right there. That might be one of my favorites. I think it's for Centipede.
If you're wrong, people are going to hate you.
If I'm wrong, it's still one of my favorites.
And this is one of my favorite. I always have to play this game when I'm there. Grid, right?
Yeah, the Grid.
Yeah,
That's a fun game.
And you could just hop on, and so many times you'll be on there, and there'll be just like strangers popping on too, because it's a 4-player game, and that was just so fun. Mm-hmm. Yep, and here we are.
We're talking about one of a kind a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Certainly worth mentioning, but you could have gone way more in depth. But yeah, like you said, it would have taken off course
it's
too much.
a little tangential.
Right, right.
That's Pete. He had, we interviewed him. He's already spoken in the documentary, but he has like dozens of records at the Galloping Ghost arcade of world records.
Yeah.
And speaking of stuff that we had to cut out, Galloping Ghost is well known for the number of world records that are set at their arcade. Mm-hmm. And again, that was just a little distracting from the overall story, so it had to be cut out, unfortunately. But we did have some interviews talking about that.
Oh, do you want to talk about this transition that you made?
Oh, sure.
The little background static.
So the static behind the image right here, this was actually filmed on my smartphone, and I have a lot of cathode ray tube TVs, CRT TVs, and I needed just a transition and a background, so I just turned one of them on and filmed the screen. I got super close to the static screen for about 10 seconds, and then just brought that into video editing software and manipulated it to just make a quick little transition.
And it works really well because, I think you mentioned before that it's it's all analog. Kind of, you get that analog feeling when you're in an arcade, and this kind of resembles that feeling.
Yeah, arcade machines are analog, and the TV static is analog technology as well, not digital technology. So I felt like it was era appropriate. It was related. I love that Dreamcast jacket that he has. I'm jealous.
The name drops that Doc had, I think, were really impressive. I have to say.
For sure. Well, he just has he has a million stories.
Yeah.
At least that's what it felt like.
I was gonna say, and we've talked about maybe if there was an extra story or two, they might be clipped to put on the YouTube page at some point.
Yeah, we had a lot of interview footage. The documentary's 30 minutes. We interviewed Doc for about 3 hours, so we could have put a lot more in. Or there's a lot of good stories that we had to cut out.
Yeah, so we'll maybe try to see if there's something that we think is worth putting out there.
Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, more footage from Galloping Ghost.
Yeah, more of
YouTube
their
channel.
footage. Because they do a lot of live streaming, so it was like having a big back catalog of footage already filmed.
Yeah, it was great.
And I wanted to include this part because this is kind of emblematic of like the one-of-one games that they have. It's
Absolutely.
like when you put a super unique, one-of-a-kind game out there, it brings all this history and it makes people happy. And it's I thought it was just important to establish like that's what they're doing at this arcade. I always think of this shot when I think of arcades. I think of looking through people's shoulders.
Oh yeah.
To see the arcade screen. And I knew because we interviewed Doc on the first day, and then we shot all of our footage on the second day and the third day. And when Doc told this story, this was one of those moments when, as soon as he was done telling it, I had the thought, like, I want to put that in.
Yeah.
Like I want to put that in the documentary.
Because it kind of represents story. Like he said, he's like, I can see that
Sure.
what that face looks like when you first walk in and you're kind of mesmerized by everything and having that reaction. And he, like he says, this is, definitely a nice little moving story that, he clearly is just shows the passion that arcades can kind of bring out of people.
Yeah, for sure. Just, video games in general, you just make memories when you play them, right? So I was really happy that he told this story. I thought it was a really nice story. So much so that, like, when we showed up, I was like, I pulled Taylor, one of our camera operators, aside and said, like, okay, if you only get footage of one game, make sure it's NBA Jam.
Gotta make sure we cover our bases.
Yeah, we have to at least get that.
Yeah.
So, and he got some awesome shots. And this game's fun.
Oh, do you want to mention that's the Budweiser version of Tapper?
That Tapper machine we just saw was old enough where it had Budweiser advertised in game.
Yep. I don't know I'm not an expert by any means, but I know there was a certain cutoff of when they weren't allowed to do that anymore. At a certain point,
they were like, all right, let's take beer out of this video game
for children, even though it's a beer game.
Yeah, it's a game where you're serving beer.
Yeah.
But I love Tapper. That's a fun game too. That's on my list of every time I go to Galloping Ghost, I play Tapper.
A month later, you don't hear about him again.
When you film arcade screens or any screen in general, you have to kind of balance. You don't want to get your reflection on the screen.
Yeah.
So we had to do a lot of. We had to be conscious of that when we were filming.
Yeah, definitely.
I remember on the third day filming, I realized we didn't have any footage of like arcade screens. It was people playing. And I remember I pulled you aside and I said, hey, make sure you get footage of screens today, which we are seeing here. Because most of the time we had been interviewing Galloping Ghost employees and worried about getting enough interview footage.
I think that's what we were focused on the first 2 days. Well, because on the second day when I was doing a lot of those, patron interviews, basically, I was really focused on that. But yes, love this shot too. There's a couple other really great shots like this one coming up. just to show like how you can kind of
This,
get
like,
immersed
and
into
this
these
is a unique
games,
game, too,
like
yeah.
a game like that. Yeah.
Some of these games you can't play at a lot of places.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that's great about filming this arcade too is every shot has like a lot of depth to it. So like if you film a long row of arcade games, there's stuff in the foreground, the middle ground, and the background. Right. So there's a lot to work with.
Which you definitely want to be thinking about when you're filming.
Yeah, of course. And it's, I mean, sometimes you just hit record and hope it looks okay, but sometimes you're able to compose the shot a little bit. And this actually, speaking of stuff that had to get cut out, I interviewed John Parrish, who's pictured here, and his interview just, again, ended up not being cohesive to the story, so unfortunately it had to be whittled out.
That's kind of what happened with so many of those interviews. It was just, so many people being asked a lot of the, not exact same questions, but some of the same overlapping questions. So, again, it was all about telling the arcade story, so certain things just had to get cut down.
Yeah, and that we wanted to ask a lot of the same questions in the interviews because then it's easier to string them together in editing, even when we do that with the premeditated interviews with the Galloping Ghost employees. That helps give some structure to the narrative. And it was tough picking how to end this documentary.
Yeah.
But I think I always wanted a montage of people saying their favorite games at some point. So I decided to put that at the end because I thought it was just a nice sort of recap of everything that's been talked about and a reminder that it comes down to just people enjoy games.
Yeah, definitely. And that was always a fun way to end an interview that I was getting to do too. So
asking people that question.
Yeah, because it was just like, okay, let's end on a high note,
Yeah,
and not that it was ever at a low notes, but
and everyone, even if you don't have a favorite game, everyone knows a game that they could throw out there
Absolutely.
that they like. Oh, and here's a great shot.
Yes, I got that shot. I was super happy when I could see that. And I mean, after, like you said, filming arcade cabinets, it was like we were getting really good at it by the end of the weekend. But I was trying to look for anything more unique and to stand out. And yeah, it was really fun to just see. I caught like, oh my God, that's reflecting in that guy's glasses. I got to get this shot.
Yeah.
And then
everyone in my personal life that's talked to me that has seen the documentary, they always mention that shot. So it's a very resonant shot. So good job.
It's nice and colorful.
Yeah. One other funny thing I want to say, or I thought it was funny, was at the end here, people list their favorite games. And Brandon says Hydro Thunder is one of the games he would always play. And in the YouTube comments for this documentary, someone just commented, "Who likes Hydro Thunder?" with a question
and
mark.
you know exactly who he's referring to, what he's referring to in that documentary.
30-minute documentary, he was just commenting on that one 10-second clip.
That's so funny.
But it's funny because I'm not a huge Hydro Thunder fan either, so I kind of related to, here it is.
Yeah.
I related to that person's sentiments.
Hey, there's an arcade game out there for everybody.
Yeah, yeah. Hydro Thunder's fun, it's just not one of my favorites.
I think that's the best sentiment to say. It's the games I love and hate the most.
And then a little bit of behind the scenes about this final shot. The NARC screen on the left side of the frame had one of our camera operators in it, so I actually had to edit them out with Photoshop.
For the
few
few seconds
shot,
that it was in there. And here's our last shot, and I believe Galloping Ghost is over, much further past that 750 count now.
Yeah, I think they're well past that, cruising towards 1,000, so good for them. But that was our little behind the scenes commentary for this just 30-minute documentary.
We learned a lot. It was over 2 years ago now, and so we've come a long way since, but super fun to do. And it's inspiring to be like, I want to do more and try to make it even better than that,
Sure, yeah, no, and it, like you said, we just kind of filmed everything that we thought we needed and then sifted through it all with editing and tried to piece together a cohesive thing. So thanks for watching. Thanks for tuning in. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments, and we'll try our best to answer them as we see them. So thanks for tuning in, and have a good one.